when they asked us to do something. I'm really excited when they told us that the exhibit was coming. And actually, we have a couple of our animals out there too. So when you go out to the exhibit, you'll see some they're not real live animals, but they're real animals, and some of Charley Harper's subjects. And that's kind of what we're here to talk about. So I'm not an artist, and I'm not an expert in Charley or Edie by any stretch, but I do really love nature, and I think that they did too. I'll use more of Charley's works than Edie's. She had a few, but you can really tell he had a deep love and care, passion for the subjects that he was working with, and that's kind of what we'll talk about today. He said, what did he say? He said, I learn as much as I can about the creatures that interest me, and they all do. I can resonate with that. I observe them and find out how they interact with each other in their environments, and I ask myself, what if? And I really like that quote from him. It's kind of what I was thinking about as I put some of this program together. So we'll talk a little bit about Ohio and some of the work that Charley and Edie have done. I like to include this slide just in case you don't know where the park district is. We're in all of Allen County. You've got 22 different park areas. You've got 30 miles of trails. So if you like what Charley and Edie were looking at, what the Harpers were using as their subject, well, go outside and you can see it too. Okay. Oh yeah, there's a bunch of places. And here we are in Allen County. But Allen County, obviously part of Ohio, this is a really rich and diverse state. We're at a crossroads for a lot of really interesting physiographic regions. There's a couple of reasons for that I want to show you. Charley, the Harpers lived down in Cincinnati and grew up in West Virginia, but they have kind of reaching all that southern part of the state, and I'll show you why it's really diverse. One of the reasons is its bedrock geology, really fascinating. We're up here in Allen County, which is all pretty well blue. That's limestone up here. But you can see how it changes across the state. There's like kind of an arch here where these different bedrocks kind of meet. And you can kind of see the different layers, and that the Cincinnati arch is really kind of where it bends. So they're right in the middle of this kind of geological hotspot down in Cincinnati. Ohio itself is kind of a really cool space as far as what's happening under our feet. And that's built by a couple of different sort of eco-regions, I guess, over the past, I don't know, millions of years. This is not Harper's work, but this is Ohio Department of Natural Resources representation of what the ecosystem might have been like when this bedrock geology was founded, was laid. Here in Allen County, this is what our bedrock may have looked like when it was still alive, so to speak. But there's lots of really interesting things happening on top of that bedrock geology as well. So this is perhaps an ancient river system that's covered eventually. Oh, I did want to say there is a little bit of fossils. I worked hard to try to find some of Charley and Edie's work that kind of fit into what I wanted to tell you, and I found fossils. Yeah, of course I did, because Cincinnati is a hot spot. If you go down to that area, Houston Woods, in the Cincinnati area, that's a hot spot for finding really great fossils. Not dinosaur bones, perhaps, but trilobites and, I don't know, horn coral, what else? I don't know, Tom knows all the fossils. But I think Charley probably did. He couldn't have not seen all these things, and of course he does have some representations here. But what happened in Ohio that really changed things, at least in the last 50 to 100,000 years, were the glaciers that came in and retreated, and then came in again and retreated again. The last one left maybe like 16,000 years ago. So glaciers, fascinating. I don't think this will work. Do you think this will work? I don't think it'll work. It wasn't working on my computer, so I doubt if it'll work on this computer. Oh!
So right when
I don't even want it to work anymore. We don't care.
We don't care
that
much.
No. Stop. Well, I could skip it. I wonder if that would help.
Wrist fracture,
Oh,
Evenity can
just
help
go.
rapidly build new
All
bone in just
right,
12
all right.
Evenity is the only bone builder that also helps slow bone loss and is proven to significant.
That was awful. Sorry. They didn't do that on my computer at all.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's not even helpful. Hold on, hold on.
Sorry.
Don't anybody move. I'll fix it. Watch this. Ready?
On
No.
June-
Get out of it. Stop it.
Well, you can skip it in 4 seconds.
I was gonna
If
say,
we-
you're
well-
probably gonna have to skip it.
Yeah, I might have to skip it.
Yeah, commercial.
Hold on a second. This is your commercial. Wait for it. There we
I mean, at least we have nature to look at.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
good, it's good. All right, so we'll skip that entirely. Here's the image I wanted you to see behind that. Glaciers are fascinating. As snow piles up in the north, they're pressing down into, well, they're pressing downhill. In our case, it would be towards the south. And as they retreat, the ice isn't moving backwards. It's melting faster than it's moving forward. The ice is always pushing forward, like a conveyor belt. The ice is always being piled up in the north and being pushed down to the south. Well, as things warm, that glacier melts faster than it moves. Does that make sense? And so as it's moving and melting, it's bringing all sorts of till and rocks, boulders with it. And when it pauses, it leaves these hills, these moraines. Anybody been to Faroe Park? That's not one of our parks, but I grew up on that side of Faroe Park. That's a moraine. That was left by a glacier. Big hill in the middle of random nowhere. Haver Ridge, that's one of our parks. It's one of our newer parks. If you've been there, there's a moraine there. So we have a few of these sort of glacial features, and you can see the part of Ohio that was covered with glaciers and the part that wasn't, and you can see kind of the history as that last glacier left, as it melted back, it left lots of really interesting deposits. So when you combine the bedrock geology with what happened with the glaciers, you get the soil left behind. And lots of different soil. This is why Ohio is so interesting, because there's so many soil types, which is fed by the bedrock, and you get different plants out of there. And before you say, "Oh, Dan, you're boring us with all of the soils," that's glacial till. That's what a lot of Allen County is covered in, this till. Before you say, "Dan, you're boring us with soils," Charlie didn't think soils were boring. So. This is one of his illustrations, because soil is really fascinating. It's the foundation of all of the plants and living things that are growing. That's enough on soils. The soils are feeding these different ecoregions, and so you get these till plains, and you get these Allegheny Plateau, and you get all of these different things kind of coming together right down here in Ohio, where Charlie and Edie were living. So much so that it feeds what's happening on the landscape. So on the left side, this is blue ash, and all the dots on the map of Ohio are where you can find blue ash. On the right side is chestnut oak, and all the dots are where you can find chestnut oak. And there's a barrier, there's almost a line that goes between where they grow in that glaciated portion and they don't grow in the unglaciated portion. So while I know soils are boring, and when I said I was going to talk about soils, somebody said, "Oh, snooze," and I thought, well, no, Charlie liked soil. But really, that informs what's happening on the landscape. So I think that's kind of cool to see. As glaciers are retreating, you get this succession of habitat, starting with essentially scoured rock and bare soil, with small plants and annual plants that grow to shrubs and eventually to trees. Perhaps we had prairies, 4,000 to 8,000 years ago, in the Pleistocene megafauna. I like this picture because I wanted ODNR's picture to still be in here. I wish that Charlie and Edie worked on some Pleistocene megafauna. I want to see Charlie's style of a mammoth, or mastodon. But those things sort of retreated and were left with forest, essentially, here in Ohio. Here's all the different types of habitats. This is circa 1800, right before European settlement really kind of changed the face of the landscape. This is kind of what Ohio looked like. And what I like about this is there's so many different colors. but almost every color is forest, just a different type of forest. There's a little bit of prairie, and there's some swamp, and there's a fen here or there, but mostly it's beech forest, it's mixed oak forest, it's swamp forest. So Ohio, where Charlie's working, is essentially forest. But what I'm trying to tell you is that not all forest is exactly the same. You know what I mean? There's so much diversity, even though most of his images came from forested types. There's so much diversity, even in the types of forests across the landscape. Here we are in Allen County. Over in Van Wert, there's a little touch of yellow. That's maybe a remnant prairie. Allen County is all forested. That's beech forest or swamp forest here in Allen County. So a little bit of prairie, and there's some beautiful stuff. This is Charley Harper's. Now I got to try to remember all their names. Do you think I can remember all their names? Neither do I. This is a field somewhere, maybe. No, this is Wild Summer. I love this. Look at all the diversity of life in our prairies. And we grow some prairies at the Park District too, a diversity of habitats. It's really a fascinating thing. You could grow this at your house too. This is one of his, is it the Ford, what was it, the Ford Times? Why can't I think of it? Is it the Ford Times? Yeah. This is one of his pieces for the Ford Times. Prairie, just a wonderful habitat type. Wetlands, a diverse variety. I couldn't find like a landscape sort of wetland from Charley Harper, but I found a lot of really fascinating images. This one's one of my very favorites, the reflection of this great blue heron with the wood duck at the bottom. This one we have in the back called Bitter and Sweet. I thought it was great. Animals that live in the wetland. Unzipped, do you know? Well, I don't know. I'm not going to look at you and ask every time, I promise.
I don't know the name of
this is
one.
a crayfish molting. Really fascinating. You know, it takes a lot of time and observation. It takes some curiosity to sit down and watch a crayfish molt. So the amount of attention that Charley Harper is putting into his subject, that you don't just get to see a crayfish molt, you got to try to see that. And so I think he worked for some of these things. Stream and riparian habitats. Ohio's full of streams. And this is a really wonderful habitat type that you can find right here in Ohio that's depicted in many of Charley's works. This one for the Cincinnati Nature Center in the autumn, I love it so much. There's a snake in the bottom that's eating a fish. There's warblers at the top, the kingfisher, butterflies are flying. There's so much happening. I love how his style is so simple, but really there's a lot going on. So you may just be using shapes, or it seems like that sometimes, but there's a lot going on in some of these images. This one called Shadow Dancers, one of his, very similar to one of his favorite pieces, or at least that's what I read, of these water striders, the Jesus bug. This one, you know what this is? It's called snapping turtle. It's not our common snapping turtle, but it is close. And then we get to forest. So this is what you're really dealing with. This is where the meat and potatoes is for the subjects of Charley's works. Forest, swamp forest, vernal pools in forests, really fascinating. And when you look at some of his pieces, like this, the deep forest, it really just, it's so complex, it's so full of life. And so some of his pieces are very, where he really isolates some of these subjects. But a lot of them, he gives you the complexity that's happening in the natural world. This one too, Forest Friends. All these different animals with the caterpillars on the leaves, and we're fighting over acorns. I just love these pieces. One more, and this one's from the Cincinnati Nature Center too. There's caterpillars hanging out of the trees and snakes on the logs, and there's toads underneath the stumps. Really just wonderful observations of the natural world. To do today was take a look at the forest through the seasons. And he actually did this a couple of times. This is a series of posters for the Cincinnati Nature Center. I didn't even realize I had, well no, I think I knew it was Charley Harper, but a friend of mine gave me this, the poster from the Edge of Appalachia, which is the same sort of idea, the four seasons depicted in Charley's style. Really kind of a cool thing. So that's kind of what I wanted to do. We'll take a look at the forest. And the nature in there, and I'll try to associate it with some of Charley and Edie's work. It's Edie, right? I'm not saying it wrong.
No, you're saying it correctly.
I should have looked it up online and not been guessing. We start out around now, so close. We're on the edge of frogs singing to us. I love the early spring, when all of these frogs, and there's multiple different types. By the way, let's all say what a frog says on 3. On mark, 1, 2, 3, go.
Ribbit.
Doesn't say ribbit. Not around here it doesn't. That was a test. All of these frogs have interesting and unique vocalizations. Ribbit comes from the Pacific tree frog, which is what Hollywood filmed outside their studio back in whatever the 40s, and they've played in every movie since then. Our frogs say lots of different things, with the chorus frog on the top with a nice little kind of a creak, and the green frog on the bottom. But these guys are vocalizing to attract a bait so that they can lay eggs, and many of them are using a vernal pool. So that's what I have on the top right. These vernal pools are depressions in woodlands that fill up in the spring, and then they're dry by midsummer. And so fish don't live there. Turtles have a hard time. Sometimes they'll migrate from local bodies of water. But really, the predators are low. And so if you're looking to lay your eggs somewhere, this is the perfect nursery, as long as your babies can get out before it dries up. And that's what a lot of these amphibians do. The salamander in the bottom does that too, only he doesn't sing. So the frogs do the singing. This one's Frog Eat Frog. That's in the back there too. I love it. He's got a couple of frogs. This is an illustration from the ABCs of nature. This is F is for frog. So this is one of Charley Harper's work. I really like, frogs are cool, and I'm excited. We're so close. We're right on the edge of frog season right now. Wildflowers, like they're so close. I can almost smell them. This one here, does anybody know this flower? Yeah, this is Trillium. If you don't know this flower, get to know this flower. This is your state wildflower, Trillium grandiflora. This is a smattering of other wildflowers that you'll see here in just the next couple of months. As we move into spring, the forest floor, which, well, right now it's covered with snow. Look at us. We got some snow this year. But the forest floor will go from kind of a blank slate to this lush, beautiful, teeming with life, carpet of not just green, but all the other colors in these wildflowers. And that's represented in, you can see that in Charley's works all over the place. He's got flowers in so many pieces. Yeah.
Not to interrupt you, but everybody's got to go to Kendrick Woods.
Oh yeah. If you want to see Trillium, let me show you a picture. 1 second, because I'll show you a picture of what Kendrick Woods is going to look like here in the beginning of May. But this piece here, which he did for the Michigan Audubon, has all sorts of wildlife. But I was looking at these flowers, and Trillium, especially because of the 3 and the geometric shapes, I feel like he uses this a lot. So you'll see Trillium in a lot of Charley Harper's works, and of course you will, because it's Ohio State wildflower, and you'll find this in all of the woodlands. All of the healthy woodlands in Ohio too. There's more of them too. This one is one of Evie Harper's, and I liked how she had some wildflowers too. I couldn't find as many sort of nature-oriented works from Edie, so that's why you won't see as many here. And we'll see when we go back there. She doesn't have she worked with some other subjects. But certainly she worked with nature as well, and I like this one, Watch Where You Walk, so be careful. We got more, there we go, come on now. This one here, and this is a poor picture that I found on the internet, but this from Glen Helen, which is where we're going soon. Glen Helen, it's just, look at all this Trillium. It's beautiful. That pattern, I just love it so much. And Charley would recognize these patterns and really try to distill them and communicate them to people. And this, we have a hill at Kendrick Woods, so in late April, early May, you'll see a hill that looks very much like this, just covered in our large flower Trillium. Really just a beautiful thing. So wildflowers, I'm excited for those. Coming up soon. As we move further into the spring, we start to get our birds back. Now we have birds. Don't be worried. We've got birds that stay all year round. But I'm talking about our migratory species, like this prothonotary warbler or many of our other friends. the hummingbird that you know and love, the redstart, which you might not know, but you could know and love, and some ducks and others. Hold on, wait for this graph to restart. This is the winter. Don't look at it now. Everyone, close your eyes. Hold on. Okay, it's going. It's going. Look now. So as we move in through the year, each of these dots is representing kind of a localization of one species. So it's like an average of where that species goes. There's 118 dots on here, and they all flood North America in the late spring. And then as they head into late summer, into fall, they're all going back down south. They're flooding in here because as our leaves open up and turn green, there's bugs eating those leaves. And they want to eat those bugs. We're not talking about bad bugs that live in your basement, by the way. We're talking about good bugs that feed the good birds. And so all of these birds they're coming back to be able to take advantage of this seasonal resource. Also, they can spread out. There's less competition. There's not as many predators. So there's some other reasons too. But they're here to eat our bugs. And so they start in last year I had my first red-winged blackbird on February 28th. So we're so close. And red-winged blackbird's one of my favorite birds, and one of my favorite backyard birds now, because I lost a bet. But I love them. And these great big flocks of red-winged blackbirds, and their black color with the bright red shoulder pads, very 80s. They show up in some of Charley Harper's works a couple of times. This one's my favorite, the Missing Migration. I think that's what it's called. I actually have a shirt. We were talking right before we started. The Audubon Society, right before I showed up on the scene, actually had, you must have had Charley Harper several years before. But they were selling some of his shirts. So anyway, it was kind of cool. So I didn't know that he was here. He was here, God. And I have one of his shirts. It doesn't fit me very well anymore, but I'm working on it. So anyway, this is migration, and birds migrate at night, and so it's important that we turn our lights off so that they can figure out where they're going, because a lot of them orient themselves by the stars and some other things, but that light pollution that we're creating is one of the reasons why we're having problems with our bird populations. And certainly all of these birds want to come back here, and they would come and visit your yard too, if you have the space for them, and we make room for them. So, do I have another one on this one? No, I'm moving on. So we're moving on into the spring. This is why the birds are back. They're back because they're Twitter painted, and they want to build a home and raise a family right here. So we start with building a nest. I took a picture. This is a picture of an eagle. He's actually, the other pictures weren't any good, but he's bringing a bunch of nesting material back here. They're preparing to lay their eggs on this nest right here. And they're singing to attract a mate, like those frogs were. But by the way, I was going to mention at the beginning, I'm a little bird heavy on this program. I like birds, but also Charlie's a little bird heavy too, so I felt like that works. They're singing to attract a mate. They're building nests to be able to prepare to raise babies. They're signaling to attract a mate, so that's why I put my little firefly down here. Because as we get into late spring, we're in the reproductive mode, and so some of us are dancing for our mates. That's this. What did he call it? Aerial? Ooh, I got it written down. Let me see. Nope, I don't have it written down. I lied. This is like aerial acrobatics or something like that. Really cool from the American woodcock, which does this great sound. One of Zach's favorite sounds. It says meep, and then he flies up in a big circle and he twitters his wing, and then he flies up and he goes up like 200 feet in the air and makes these big spirals, and then he'll come back and he makes this really weird watery, and then he'll start right where he started before, and he'll and then just meet for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes, and then fly in a big circle and go up again, and then the ladies think, dude, that's a cool dude, and then they'll mate, and he's like, all right, cool, and he peace out. So I tried to do a dance once, and my wife said, "No, you got to at least wash the dishes." So the American woodcock, sometimes they're fighting to secure a mate or to secure a territory. So here's American robins having a little bit of a squabble. I thought that was good. I like how Charley denotes movement with just these lines. I think it's really kind of a cool. I like what he's doing there. Maybe they'll fall in love. This is lovey-dovey. He's got so many dad jokes in all of the names for these things. I love it. I was just getting more and more tickled. Lovey-dovey, it's great. Here's cardinals, red bird, red bud. So as the red buds start to open, red bud's a gorgeous pink purple tree that you could put in your yard, and then you could have a splash of color, just like these birds they're about to build their nest. Wood thrush in the woods, they're building this nest like this indigo bunting. Look at them try to eat that caterpillar. Get it! So they're doing all of this in preparation for raising babies, right? So we've done all of our dances, we've fought all of our neighbors. Now we get to do the work of raising a family. It's not just birds, of course. This is the time of year for many animals to be raising a family, right? So there's bunnies that you find in your yard. There's snapping turtles are coming out and digging holes and laying eggs. This on the bottom is a Cecropia caterpillar that just hatched. There were 256 eggs, and I watched them, and they all hatched before I got a chance to take a picture or a video of them. And this one was the last one, and I got it. 256. This is their mother, by the way, the Cecropia moth. What a gorgeous animal. This one emerges in the spring, mates and lays eggs within 2 weeks or so. And so while it feels like, I don't know, like a little out of order with the reproduction thing that we're talking about, but their adult lifespan is only a couple of weeks. And so they're going through their whole adult life here in the spring, getting ready to lay eggs, which will hatch a few weeks later and become those beautiful caterpillars that grow up all summer long. And then you got to feed those babies. Here's wood thrush. This is called chorus line. I like that because the wood thrush is a beautiful singer. Here's a cardinal feeding. I love how he incorporates what they're doing. He's clearly looked at this nest before. Cardinals build a nest full of sticks, and wood thrush use a lot of leaves in their nest. Yellow warblers build their nest in the crotch of those trees. This isn't a random nest. He's not just saying, I saw the cardinal and I'm going to make it a nest. No, he's observing and paying attention to what they actually build and how they actually build it. And still, in his style, distilling that in a way that you could identify that as a cardinal nest. A birder would say, if you said, what kind of nest is this? You might be able to get to cardinal pretty easily. Not just birds, like I mentioned. Here's a passel of possums. Aren't they so cute? I love possums so much. This is foximile. Foximile's out in the exhibit hall too. I love this. It's great. What a den of cute little baby foxes there. So we've had our babies. Now it's time. In the summer, we watch them mature. And this summer is the time for growth and vitality. This is when everybody's kicking. So birds are out of the nest. This here, does anybody know this bird? This is a test. This is a challenging test. Yes, Mary's got it. This is a juvenile cardinal, right? Cardinals have a big orange bill. The juveniles have you probably already knew that. You're like, I thought it was a cardinal, but you told me it was a test. It's an easy test. Yeah, cardinal says they're young with a brown bill. I get people calling me like, I don't know what that bird is. It looks like a cardinal, but it's got a brown bill. Yeah, it's a baby cardinal. But there's lots of babies that are growing up this time of year too, right? The Middle Eastern cottontail, the fawns. I love those foxes coming out of their den. That vernal pool that we mentioned before, where all those frogs are, here in midsummer, this is the same vernal pool from the same angle. It's dry, bone dry. All those frogs that were tadpoles have metamorphed and come out of the water because there's no water left, and so they're now in the forest floor somewhere doing things. I think Charley captures the summertime really well too. Here's a fawn playing in the meadow. This is from something with Bambi. I can't remember. An illustration he did for Golden Guides. I like this one too. This is called, is it just a good world? Bambi finds the meadows. It's just a good world. And I thought, man, didn't that feel like summer? Raspberries coming off the vine. You've got box turtles out here. The chipmunks getting in the way. The cardinals flying past. The bat, the bullfrog, and the bonfire. Doesn't that feel like a summer night? I just love it. This is called box seat. I love this guy. He gets me every time. But here, this is the season for growth. This is racrobat. Is this one in the back, Hannah? I think it is. Is it racrobat? What a dude. I love it. So, summertime maturation, right? So this is my favorite time. Well, the spring leading into the summer is the best time of year, I think. But all of these points in the year, there's something out here. And certainly the summertime, the late spring into the summer is full of life. We've had our babies, they're growing up now. As we get into the later part of the summer, you start to see more bugs. It's not because there are more bugs, in fact there's probably less. It's because the bugs that have survived are now getting bigger and they're a little easier to see. This one is advertising its presence too. This is a broad-winged tree cricket, and this he's stridulating. He's using his wings against each other like a file and a scraper, and that's where all of the sounds of all the crickets and the katydids come from. All the sounds in late summer, except for the cicada. That's where they're all rubbing something against something else, and it's usually their wings stridulating. So this guy is singing to us, but there's lots of bugs that show up in late summer. And I know this slide, some people say, ooh, bugs, but no. Bugs are cool. This is our cecropia moth down at the bottom. This is a katydid, a conehead. Of all the singers, I don't like the conehead. I should take him out of here. He's pretty irritating. Dragonflies in the late summer, really great. Of course, our spiders get big and they make their webs in our in our windows, and then we like, what is this spider? And then we get to watch the spider eat moths every night. It's really exciting. But certainly the Harpers were into bugs. So here's a I got them all written down. This one's called "Once There Was a Field." And look at how excited this kid is to watch all of this happening here. So much going on. Certainly the birds. I love the birds. But I'm looking at the bugs now. The spiders are getting bigger. The butterflies are fluttering around. The beetles and the bees, the grasshoppers. Just so full of life. Ladybugs come up a few times in Charley and Edie's. This one's called Red Bug, Red Barn. This one is just called Ladybugs. This one's an Edie Harper. So ladybugs show up a number of times in a few different pieces of the Harpers. This one's cicada. I love these guys. This one makes sound a little different than the rest of them. So most of our singers are crickets and katydids. And then the cicadas, they're like the brass, right? They're pretty loud, kind of obnoxious. I was a brass, I know how it is. But everybody else is completing this orchestra in the late fall. So spring is for the birds and the frogs, but fall is for the bugs. And they're really cool. Insect diversity is this one. I just love what he's doing with all of these shapes and colors. And these are real things. These are things you can go outside and see. Maybe not at this moment, but later in the summer, in the late summer especially, the bugs are great. Get outside and look at some bugs. So late summer, we start to see all of these bugs. Our animals are maturing. We're starting to prepare to wind down again, right? So we kind of ramped up for summer. Now we're coming a little bit back down, and you can see that in the change of the leaves, in the maturation of the seeds and the fruits, right? Things that have been growing all summer long, they're now ready to plant. You know, the acorns are ready to drop. That's Jack in the pulpit on the right there. The color is just fascinating, and of course, Charley works with those colors. Fantastic. I love this one here. What's this even called? You won't even remember what it's called. I could make it up probably. If I made a joke, you would probably say, oh, that's a funny joke. But no, the wood duck with all of this autumn color. This one's called Ladybugs Hibernating. Now, I was a little sad because he loves ladybugs, but these are probably Asian ladybugs. But some of our native ladybugs will congregate too. I've found some really cool ones. They don't usually come into our house though. So this one's outside, it's probably a native one. So that's what I'm going to give him. But ladybugs hibernating in the leaf litter there. As things start to kind of wind down, we're moving into the fall. We're solidly in the fall. Everybody's trying to get ready for winter now. Now, you've done your reproducing, you've done your growing, now it's time to get ready for what's next. We know winter's coming. And so here, well, the deer have something else on their mind. They're not getting ready for winter. They've got one thing, at least the males have one thing on their mind, so don't talk to them. But everybody else is trying to figure out how to deal with winter. The birds are beginning to fly south, or some of them are already left. The groundhog's getting ready to hibernate. The bats are finding their roost. Here's deer. I thought that was pretty close. That's pretty close. This one, here's our birds migrating. This one, birds of a feather. I love this this piece. This is our flock of red-winged blackbirds, right? They flocked up and came back in February, and then they spread out and they hated each other. And they yelled and they fought each other and they screamed all day long, "Conqueree!" And they're always telling each other to get out of here. And then in the fall, they're like, oh yeah, we're cool. Let's all just join some of the largest flocks in North America, and we'll have 1 million birds fly across the landscape as they go down to the southern United States. Birds of a feather. It took me a while to find any bat-related Charley Harper works, but this one's one of his from, I think it's one of the Golden Guides, but one of his illustrations. There's bats hibernating, right? They're going to get away. They're preparing to leave, preparing for winter. Even our buzzards, the turkey vultures, I like this. Isn't this fun? Look how cute they are. He doesn't even know what's wrong. But they're going to start, they're not going to migrate, but they're fair weather friends. So when it's frozen and cold, there's nothing to eat, so they just go a little further south. And then when it's warm, sometimes they come back. And then when it's cold, they go a little south again. But it's great to, sometimes you'll see them kettling in great big flocks as they start to gather to move on. As we get into the hardened part of the winter, you'll find things like this. This is the cocoon of that cecropia moth. So we saw it as a baby, and I showed you the adult. We saw it grow up a little bigger. Now it builds this cocoon around itself. It's going to pupate on the inside of this silken sleeping bag. In fact, the way the cecropia does it, it's a double insulated silken sleeping bag so that it can hang up in the branches. This was only maybe 5 or 6 feet off the ground. And it's going to hang up in the branches, and it'll endure the cold. Right now, it'll endure whatever temperature, 6 degrees outside right now, because it's double insulated in there, as it just kind of waits until, and it changes until the spring when it'll come out as that adult. And then the adult lives for 2 weeks. That's it. And the baby lives all summer long. So that cecropia moth's really cool. But there's lots of ways to deal with the winter. For those that haven't left, things like groundhogs and at the top going into hibernation. Oh, fascinating. A lot of animals will take naps over the winter. They'll go dormant for certain periods of time. A groundhog's, he's comatose. He's out. Like, you can't wake. If you went into a bear's den, when the bear's hibernating, you shook the bear. Run. If you go into a groundhog's den and you shake the groundhog, he's out. He's totally comatose. His heart rate's at a couple beats a minute at the most. His breathing rate's 1 or 2 times a minute. His temperature's near the ground temperature in the 30s and 40s. So like everything, the metabolism stops. So they're totally hibernating. And that's kind of what, see, reptiles don't work the same way, reptiles and amphibians don't work the same way as warm-blooded mammals do. So what they do in order to escape the cold is they'll go dormant, but if it heats up, a lot of times they'll heat up too. So it's not like the same process. But here are green frogs at the bottom of the pond. They're just going to wait down there, and it doesn't freeze underneath the water level. It'll freeze on top and then at the bottom, so it's like 34 degrees right there. And they're just going to wait. But the one at the bottom is my favorite. That's a wood frog. A couple of our frogs do this. They can't bury very deep, and they don't generally live in ponds. They're doing these vernal pool things, right? So they don't have deep water that they can go hide underneath. And so they get down as far as they can into the leaf litter on the bottom of the forest floor, and then they just let it happen. So they're not running from the cold, they embrace it. He's frozen solid. If you picked up this wood frog, you could wrap him on the table and probably break something off. That would be terrible. But he's got antifreeze, a chemical that acts like an antifreeze, so that he doesn't, so the crystal structure of frozen water doesn't rupture all of his cells. And when he thaws out in the spring, he'll just reanimate, and he's fine. He's a frozen solid, hard as a rock. Really cool. Some animals, like the junco in the bottom right, This is their escape from the winter. They were living further north or higher altitudes, and they came to balmy Ohio to spend the wintertime. So we are the South for them. So we get some of those guys too. I put this here because those leaves that fell from the trees in September, October into November, those are so important. They're important for the wood frog living, trying to suspend animation underneath them. They're important for birds like juncos and many others to find bugs that are hibernating as well. They're important to blanket the roots. There's so much life in those leaves. Maybe consider, don't get rid of them. Leave the leaves if you can. Put them in your garden beds because they're so important. And Charlie thinks they're important too. Look at this. This is called box turtle. There's an eastern towhee. This is a box turtle. Perhaps he's ready to go into hibernation. He'll dig down pretty deep and kind of outlast the winter below the frost line so he doesn't freeze solid. And he usually needs soil that he can dig into, and that comes from the years and years, hundreds, thousands of years of accumulated leaves, building a nice soft mat on the forest floor. Box turtles, here's under the sweet gum tree. Can you find the cardinal? This was a bummer. This would be hard. This one's the squirrel in a squall. I thought that was nice. We got to prepare for the winter here, folks, and sometimes we just got to tough it out. That's why a squirrel's got a big floofy tail, so he can try to protect himself. You can keep a little blanket on him. So moving into the heart of the winter now, it's cold. And sometimes there's even snow. Look at that. We had snow this year. I'm so excited. It's been maybe too cold, but snow, that's good. I get a lot of people saying, winter's not the best time to go outside. But I know some people, this is their favorite time of year to go outside. This is a really great time to get outside. And there's lots of really cool things, unique things that you wouldn't necessarily notice or maybe be able to notice in the summer and spring and summer. Sometimes it's not very snowy, it's just foggy. But that's okay too. But looking for signs of animals in the snow is really, you can do that in the mud too, but it's not as fun to walk in. The snow is great, and seeing this bird wings, and this possum, poor little guy showed up at our bird feeder. What a cutie. They have a hard time in the winter because their ears and their tails are naked, and poor little guys have a tough time. So I always say my heart goes out to the poor little possums. We get winter visitors sometimes. That's a saw-whet owl. That's the best photo I got. I saw. But there's signs of animals that you can see that sometimes you would overlook maybe in the summertime. Things like those woodpecker holes. This one's called upside downy. I love it. Look at this little downy woodpecker. Isn't that great? And watching birds in the wintertime is great because there's not as many, which you might think, oh, that's not a great time. But now is the time when you can actually learn them, and there's only 25 that really you need to learn. You know what I mean? So instead of having 100 different birds and being overwhelmed, now you can just focus on our 20 friends that show up or stick around all year round, like this downy woodpecker, or this tufted titmouse, this titmouse tidbit. And this is, I love how he's not just showing you the animal, but he's showing you their behavior too. Can you see that he's got a seed under one foot, and that head going up and down, he's cracking that seed open. So when you watch a titmouse, as I'm sure that you've seen, grab a seed from your feeder and run back to the tree, because they don't stick around. They're going to grab one. They're grab and go, dine and dash. They show up, grab a seed, they'll go sit in a branch nearby, and they'll crack that open, and they'll look just like that. So Charlie's paying attention. You can pay attention too. Here's bird feeder. There's lots of different birds we can get out there. It's a great time of year to be a birder because they come to you. If you don't even have to go outside, just put up a bird feeder. Certainly go outside, but I like this one too. This is called Hare's Breadth. He's just escaped that hawk. See that? That good. I like that one's back there too. So you got to take a look at that one. But certainly the winter time, it's a time of scarcity, and so you're going to see some things. You're going to find piles of feathers at different times, and perhaps that hawk gets a meal, perhaps he doesn't. This owl got a meal. I like this one. A snowy owl. That's a winter visitor that might show up. We've had them in Allen County. We don't get them regularly, but they show up every once in a while again. So here towards the end of winter, right now is kind of what I'm thinking, where as things start to thaw, right before the frogs, this kind of late winter, really early spring, this to look on a smaller level. So I left this slide in here, and I didn't find a lot of art from Charley. I would have liked to ask him to look at lichen like this. This is the side of a tree outside of my office. It was just the side of a tree. And if you look closely, you can see there's like 7 or 8 different colors on here. There's all sorts of different organisms living. And this was just a little pack. I just took a picture of the side of a tree. Go look at the side of a tree. We get distracted by the flowers and the birds and the frogs and the bugs and the leaves in the spring. But in the wintertime, we might have a little time to slow down and look at some of these things on kind of a more basic level. And the moss and the fungus do this too. You know, these are things that thrive in the winter. Sometimes they thrive in the winter because there's no canopy layer of leaves, and so the moss, for example, when it's called poikilohydric. I won't get into too much detail. You can use that at your next gathering. Poikilohydric means it's environmentally supported by the water. So like it absorbs water when water's available and it's ready to go. And if the water's frozen or not available, it dries out and just waits. And so moss is, if it's a warmish, if it's 32 degrees outside, there's no light, there's no blocking anything from the canopy, it's ready to go right now. And so the wintertime is actually when moss does a lot of its reproduction, many types of moss. And so that's what this is on the left. These are the reproductive structures of moss, and that's happening right now. You can go outside right now. Well, maybe not today, it's pretty cold, but go out and look anyway. So lichen over here with a little moss in the middle, fungus doing its thing too. Fungus a lot of times in these kind of damp periods in between. It's not going strong in the summer and the winter, but in the spring and fall, fungus does a lot of work. And then here at the bottom, this is skunk cabbage melting its way through the snow, the first blooming spring wildflower. We're going to look for that this Sunday. Do you think we'll find it? I don't know. Come out with me on this Sunday at 1:30. But you know, there were some other things that I thought sort of late winter. Winter is a time of scarcity, so I put some of these. I didn't change my slide because I wanted to tell you about moss and lichen. But let's get back to Charley Harper. Winter is a time of scarcity, so you'll find things looking for food in creative in a variety of places, like that woodpecker in the stump, and this the crow in the corn. This one's called furry feeder. That's because he just stole all the seeds from my bird feeder. And then this one, sycamore. Well, you call it yellow-bellied sapsucker, which is true. But I saw it on as savoring sycamore, which I enjoyed. We like the sapsucker because they drill holes and they drink the sap. And they do that for a variety of trees, including sycamore. But one of the trees they like to do it for is maple trees. And maple trees are producing that sap, which we like to harvest for maple syrup. And our heads are all in about maple syrup. We're doing a 4th grade program right now. So the yellow-bellied sapsucker is our friend. And all of this kind of circle of the year, we're back to where we started. And even that represented, this is a 4 times where you see the pollinating and the work happening in the summertime, and then things start to fall and drop their seeds, and winter perhaps dormant, but there's lots of cool things happening in winter, and we start the whole process over again in spring. This is what Charley's noticing and Edie are noticing in the natural world. This is what you can notice too. We've lost a lot over the last couple hundred years. So, you know, a couple hundred years ago, Ohio had all sorts of wildlife, bison and elk and wolves and cougars and beavers and otter and all sorts of really cool things. About 120 years ago, it was all gone. We didn't even have deer in the state of Ohio for a period of time. We extirpated deer. Can you believe that? We have some of that back, mostly in southern and eastern Ohio. So that's where probably, you know, in the Cincinnati, Charley Harper worked a lot. He went to the edge of Appalachia and some of those places down there, Cincinnati Nature Center. So some of that's coming back. It's not coming back for everybody. So this is Charley Harper's passenger pigeon. passenger pigeon is extinct now. We have beavers starting to come back, but only kind of in certain spots in the state. We are getting turkey back, so that's a big win, I think. So if you see turkey, remember those were not here 60 years ago. They were gone. We kicked them out of Ohio, and now they're coming back. So there's good work that's going on, partly due to the efforts of conservationists like Charley Harper. You know, he's an artist, but he worked a lot for conservation. And what's happening in Allen County is not the same as what's happening across the state. Across the state, we're at 30% forested. It was 95% forested 200 years ago. It got down to 10%. We're at 30% in Ohio, but we're only at 10% here or a little less here in Allen County. Allen County doesn't look forested; it looks more like this. Although that has too many rolling hills. That's not, I don't know where that's from, but it's too many hills for Allen County. Because this is what we've done. This is Charley Harper's, he calls this Backhoesaurus. But this is the same, remember the wild summer that I showed you at the very beginning? That's the same one. And this one too, it's a little grainy, but this one says, coming soon, Quail Valley condos. And they're destroying the habitat for the quail, and now we're building condos. This is what's happening. This is what we're doing across our landscape. And it's unfortunate because we kind of need this stuff. I think Charley would agree. What we get from nature is really important. Important from a pocketbook perspective, because that's what we care about. Money, money, money. So we get money from nature too, the products that it gives us, the regulatory services that we would have to do otherwise, the cleaning of the carbon sequestration and the filtering the water. We got to pay for that if nature doesn't do it for us. And so we get things from there. But then I think you would agree that Charley is leaning a lot towards that cultural aspect too, the aesthetics, the inspiration, the beauty, the spiritual aspect of what you get from nature. It's really important. It's important for your health too. We're learning this more and more and more. Your mental and psychological, your physical and emotional health, spiritual health, that nature is really important for a lot of those aspects. Let's talk about that maybe another time. I could talk a while. But nature does good things for you. And I think Charley would agree. Even if it's just a back scratch. Sometimes you really need a back scratch. And I would agree. I think that the Harpers would agree that nature is necessary in this animal diversity. And it's happening in our backyards too. This is what a lot of our backyards look like. Nobody lives here. You don't play here. Nobody kicks a soccer ball here. If they did, maybe it'd be necessary. But certainly there's no birds going to live there. No bugs live there. Even in a landscape like this is all non-native. None of this. No bugs eat these plants. And I'm talking about the good bugs that feed the birds. The bugs eat the plants. That means no birds eat the bugs. You don't get birds living here. Sometimes as a society, I think we're distracted from what's really important by things that are maybe seen flashy or fancy, often very fleeting. This is called a meme. The kids do the memes now, and so memes, that's what this is. But he's distracted from what he shouldn't be distracted from. We need a healthy environment, not that extra stuff. And you can do that in your backyard. This is all native plants. You can make your backyard look as beautiful and manicured as a traditional landscape, but you can do that with native plants. And certainly you could do that in a more wild way too, like the picture at the top, somebody's backyard with a fence that didn't matter. And then at the bottom, they just replaced, a couple feet of that edge with things that birds and bugs and wildlife supports them. And so now it's a much better backyard. I think so. Maybe you do too. Charley would. And this little, even if all you can do is a little pocket prairie, this little spot of prairie, that's going to give a lot of life. And I bet Charley would spend a lot of time observing the wildlife happening in just this 4-foot square, and make some really beautiful pictures. You can do that too. I like what these people did. I use this for almost every presentation because this is my favorite one. Because here you have a yard that nobody uses. No, this isn't a barbecue yard. This is just a yard, right? Nobody's going to walk on here. You're going to walk inside in the way. This is not a place where nobody needs this turf grass. We need turf grass for things we use it for, but nobody needs this turf grass. And those chrysanthemums don't do anything. There's nothing going on here. This is a desert when it comes to environmentally. There's nothing that can live here. And what these people did, along with residing their house, was create an oasis out of their desert. Now maybe your HOA won't let you do all of this at the same time, so take it one step at a time. But here you have low to high, and you've got a trellis and a walkway, and you've got a little sign that says what you're doing, and you've got bird feeders and bird baths and yard ornaments. You've got all sorts of stuff going on here. And I bet the Harpers would spend all day in your yard if you had a yard that looked like this. And this is kind of what he depicted here in this one's ecological restoration. Or no, that's not what it is. It's called Biodiversity in the Burbs. And I thought, boy, that's really nice. Because sometimes we think the wild stuff, the stuff that Charley Harper's creating, or using as a subject for creating all of his art, sometimes we think that that's far away. We got to go to the park to see those things. We got to go, to the Yellowstone to see something really beautiful. And yet this is what could happen in your backyard. There's even a yard flamingo in there if you can find it. These are animals and plants that could be in your living spaces too. And I think that the Harpers would agree that that's a good place. I did like this. I like this. I found this in the parks a while ago. I don't know where it was, way back in some corner, and I put it in the library, and somebody took it out of the library, and I was very sad. And then I realized it was Charley Harper. I don't even think maybe I knew it. I don't know if I knew it or not. But I like this because this is parks. Embark an arc in your local park. I think that that's important. And I think what we do at the Park District is important to try to preserve wild spaces. But I don't think it's as important as making that happen in your living spaces. So it's good to have, see, I changed the title. That's what I did. I don't know if anybody saw it. I think it's important to have sort of spaces that can serve as sources of some of these wildlife and preserve that. But we're not going to be able to preserve wildlife in these isolated, fragmented, our parks aren't going to do it for us. But we got to do it in our yards and our living spaces. I think we can do that. I think that the Harpers would agree. And I think that we can engage with it. I like this guy. This is from the Ford Times. Here he is. Look at his shirt. I think it's great. What questions do you have?